Okay, so this week, instead of your typical update, we're going to jump right in, more of a Q&A format. We've got a couple of questions here from everyone, and thank you for those that participated and submitted your questions. I'm sure many people are thinking the same questions but didn't have the time nor inclination to post those. So we'll get everyone's questions answered. Okay, so the first question, jumping right in, is from Port City Bob. Can you give us any figures at all on AwesomeFix? Okay, so as of right now, I don't want to step outside what we've already predicted or projected, I should say. We've given the best estimates that we can at this particular time. We'll probably expand on those numbers and clarify a few things as we proceed forward with the expansion of AwesomeFix. This is to give you a little bit of an update as far as when we're going to be posting these revenues, and this is actually a question, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but we're still going through some of the insurance reimbursement for hospitals and surgical centers, anywhere between 30 and 90 days. Some of them are running beyond that. So we are working with that. We do need to get this issue resolved. I've done many phone calls in reference to this, so we have to make sure that we kind of tighten this up and make sure that this is not a continuing issue so that we get those revenues in. Obviously, those revenues are important to continue not only production, but the build out of that company. So that's one of the reasons we're focused on the financing for that company as well. So hopefully that doesn't directly give you a specific number, but let you know, we'll give you a little better fidelity on that down the road. Port City Bob also asked, are the H2O demo units left in the field working properly, and are they generating any revenue for the company? Okay, so these units, the demo units, they're small capacity. They are absolutely working properly. We've had different scales as far as demo units and demonstrations. They've all worked well. This is why we're so confident on the scale up. As far as generating revenue, it's nominal. I know that the guys down in Texas operating the equipment, they mostly use it now for testing and demonstrations, just to test before and after treatment. Okay, Adam wants to know, can you give us any figures at all on AwesomeFix? Okay, we went over that. Are the H2... okay. So he's kind of asking the same questions that we already addressed. JMac. I think JMac gets the gold star for the most questions maybe here. Thank you, JMac, for submitting your questions. Okay, so JMac, honestly, AU, the biggest question on everyone's mind, as I'm sure you can tell, is when realistically will we see revenues from AwesomeFix or H2O on the queue? Please answer this. It has been years now. We're expecting some of it to show up, and it still hasn't. Okay, so keep in mind, we acquired both H2O and AwesomeFix in 2021. We are going to post those revenues. Obviously, things move slow in the finance department. We had, obviously projected those revenues based on a number of factors, including, the subsequent financing, sales contracts, IP protection. Obviously, getting the IP protection in place was pretty important to us. So there's a couple of things that we needed to work on. I'm looking at the rest of your questions here. And just to get kind of touch on JMac's question, look more towards Q3 and Q4 to finally see those numbers on the Q. All right, so JMac wants to know about Nathaniel Energy, it looks like. Okay, so with Nathaniel Energy, some of that tech's already onboarded. We're not going to get into that specifically in this video. Maybe in the future we can do something, but it's still a little premature to kind of disclose some of that. We've got some patents we need to file, etc. But that tech, specifically the combustor technology, that's going to be onboarded by the end of the year and integrated to some of the more remote and mobile sites. I'll get into specifics of that, but that's a pretty nice piece of tech. Again, I don't want to give a sales pitch here on something we haven't really fully announced, but you're talking about something with with a near zero carbon footprint that can create energy from almost anything carbon based. There's a few things. We'll get into specifics. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but this is a pretty big deal. But we also need to fund that as well, right? So when people ask why is it taking so long, or why you have all this tech, why aren't you releasing it? You have to allocate those dollars in stepwise manner so that we can get to roll this technology or these products out one at a time. You try to do it all at once, you're going to fail. You're going to run out of money. Okay, so Eugenius, the stock / RE investor, from the businesses under UAT Group or UATG, which is currently generating the most net revenue, and is there one that is doing surprisingly better than you anticipated? Okay, so yes, as far as better than we anticipated, which was a little overwhelming, was H2O, right? We started off with the wet water technology. We knew that was a very big market segment. Out of left field came the iron mitigation or the metal ion removal technology. We were, I'm still impressed with how quickly we were able to develop the technology, something that no one else has really been able to do other than the refineries heating it to high temperatures and cracking it. We're doing a completely different process. So, that is something that surprised us all on the demand, at just how big that demand was. As far as the revenues, obviously the dream company is posting the bulk of the revenues. That should change shortly. But again, I guess H2O is the biggest surprise. We knew H2O was significant, as we felt the same way about the other companies. As far as AwesomeFix, we have some investments in some other companies. These are all significant technologies. Unfortunately, you can't do it all at once, and there was going to be some development time. Okay, TBear. TBear might be beating JMac out on the questions here. He's got quite a few, so let's take them down. TBear, again, thank you for taking the time. Obviously, this is very time consuming for you as well to formulate these questions and submit them. So again, thank you for taking the time out and submitting these questions, and hopefully it helps others that did not ask the question. Okay, you said in previous video that the companies for H2O are ready to cut checks. Will we hear any more about this? Also, out of the 12 or so contracts you talked about, not a single one wants to do a prepayment to get the ball rolling. So what TBear is talking about here is, previously in a video I had mentioned we have had clients come to us and say, should we prepay? You need a deposit. What is that going to look like? In the beginning, nobody wanted to do that until they saw it actually working, right? And that's understandable. But now you're asking people to pay for a service that has not yet been provided. That's just not industry standard. That is something we're going to be looking at. So how are we going to label this? How are we going to paper this up, right? What I'm going to do in the future, because we already have signed agreements, you don't want to go back on agreements that have already been signed. We are going to ask, or require, I should say, a security deposit for the equipment on site that's going to be operating 24/7. So we are going to be taking in those security deposits, and that should offset any initial costs, or at least partial, I would say most of the initial cost of manufacturing and getting equipment out. So, this would be, if you want to think of it, because I understand why this is a difficult question for some and why people just don't understand it. That would be very similar to hiring someone and then asking them to get paid immediately for the work they're going to do. It just doesn't really work out that way. So that's why we're not getting, now if it was equipment, if we're selling a widget or a product, not service, then we would obviously ask for a prepayment before we did that. July 13th, 2022, PR or press release stated, H2O Processing expects to deliver a full-scale mobile version of this technology to its first customer within 90 days. How could you expect that? How could y'all expect that? Doesn't it take 2 months to build units and time for materials, trucking, etc.? It's 11 months since. Okay, so the simple answer is, unfortunately, we were too optimistic in the banking process as a component of delivery. So again, the banking process has been, and the the general segment of banking to lend has been very challenging. There are certain things that banking is going is more fluid with, but when you talk about new technology, especially in this sector, it's been a challenge, surprisingly so, especially in the energy sector. I never thought I'd see, and none of us really did, thought we'd see the resistance. And I wouldn't say it's resistance. It's really making sure and doubling down. I mean, they're doing personal guarantees on the loans. We're looking, we're putting insurance policies in place. These are all things they're looking for, to the point where the security is so far beyond you would typically expect. So it's been a challenge. We've been getting through it. Whatever they need from us, we've been delivering on, and we're willing to. So, but there's a process, unfortunately. That's pretty cumbersome. Okay, the next question he had was PR 8 months since all expected the first unit to be delivered. I was just wondering why you said 90 days with no money or way to deliver a full size unit in that time. Okay, so I stand by the general comments of timing, but I have to emphasize a lot of it was contingent upon said financing, right? So we did not expect that we would see uh, these delays. It was very surprising for us, even including the attorneys that were involved and many of the team members. So, okay. Now I will say this: as far as the funding, when you say there was no way to really do it, there are assets that are shared or that are available through strategic partners. One of which we are currently working on now. One particular asset was a piece of land that we could either leverage or sell and use for the build out. We decided to sell, or partner decided to sell, and then we are going to use some of those proceeds. So we've been working through title on that and some of the closing stuff, pretty large block of land, and we're going to be using some of that to fund discharge well and other units. Could we get a revenue estimate for AwesomeFix? Last estimate we got was in March, 4.66.3 years end. Since then, we have increased production. Okay. So again, I think I answered this already. TBear probably didn't see it. I think JMac might have asked that question. So we're not going to go over that again. An honest and realistic yearly revenue estimate for Javelin. Again, I would say we've provided the best estimates we can at this particular time. We will update these estimates. It's just not time to do so. There was again, I think some of you saw we're working towards getting some of the patents finalized, getting patent protection in place. Give an example: the Infinity Plate is something we'd like to launch. I need to get those patents approved because you're talking about something that it's critical, right? We really need to protect the IP. So we're waiting. Would it be possible to get PRs released to brokers? Like just about every other company does. It's been 5 PRs now, and they haven't gone to brokers. Can you do this basic thing again? Okay, I'm not sure what you're referencing. PRs are released publicly to everyone at the same time. They do go. The distribution on that does meet the brokers and meets the SEC guidelines for disclosure. There's no way to specifically target a broker, nor would we specifically target one group and not another. We put it all out to everyone at the same time. I can't force them to make that information available to their clients or their operations, but I will say that we do release it that way. Unless you're aware of something I'm not. If you are, please send us a message. Okay, Babar71. Realistically, when will we hear that HTO units are built and in the field earning revenues? Will it be, essentially he's asking, will it be in 2023? I guess the real easy answer is by the end of the year, we expect to have those revenues posted, multiple machines in place with more in production. Now the production side of this is going to be ongoing for quite some time. We have obviously many units that we need to build. So look more towards the end of the year. When will we see audited queues along with S1? That was talked about last year, but did not, or never happened. Again, it's a little premature to discuss corporate action. There are some things we're working on, getting a little clarity with FINRA, and we'll get into that because there was a question about that, I think. Yeah. Okay, so there was a question about that. We'll get into a little more of the details of that here in a few minutes. What are the plans to get new investors? Will PRs actually get on the wires? Again, this wire broker page thing, that seems to be, maybe you're talking amongst yourself. We do put that information out to everyone. When will this happen? You know, I'm not sure. I'm going to look into why this is being discussed. If someone has any insight as to why you feel it's not making it to brokers, let me know. My understanding is it goes out to everyone. And honestly, I know for a fact it is because it's actually released through OTC as well as MCAP Media. So they do have access to it. And if you're aware of a broker not informing their clients, that's a choice that they are making. We will. Okay, what is this? Okay. All right. So again, we have to build those revenues. We will audit, then do it either an S1 or a Form 10, and then uplist and market the company as well as its subsidiaries. We're not necessarily going to do anything specific for any one group. We're always going to do it generally speaking. Okay. So let's see here. Okay, they're asking about H2O finance. Bass Fisher's asking the status. I mean, it's in process on the financing. Will Q2 show revenues from AwesomeFix H2O? I think I answered that. More towards Q3, we'll begin to see those revs. Can you explain why? Okay, why the Hygeia sales last month were okay? We're not clear as to why the revenues are significantly higher than what we expected. What we can say is we are constantly and dynamically adjusting marketing. So they are reviewing that and seeing what changed. Is it the summer? Is it the end of the year for, as far as the sales seasons? We're not really sure. It's not clear, but we are definitely looking into it. Okay. Robert Kelly. Okay, what is the status of the uplist? All right, so again, we are moving towards and there's some other questions here, it looks like, in reference to this. Yes, we still want to uplist. We need some clarification from FINRA on a few things. Now, I don't want to get into specifics, but there's a couple of things that we were in discussion with FINRA about. I need to make sure that the corporate history is where it needs to be and that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. There is a predecessor issue that goes back to a company called Third Millennia in 1987, I believe. So this became an issue. Again, this was never an issue previously. But again, now there are some questions. Now, this goes back to Third Millennium Telecommunications. There's also an Evans Environmental Corporation. We've dealt with FINRA before on this. We've never had any issues, so we didn't anticipate a historical issue. There are, obviously rules and procedures have changed. This really should not have been one of them. And we are working with legal and making sure that a corporate history is where it needs to be so that we can file S1, so we can do the or Form 10 if that's what you so choose. Make sure the audits are where they need to be and that we are able to file our Edgars with 100% accuracy. And then we can uplist. We just, and quite frankly, we didn't have all of this information readily available. Now, board resolutions, we have that. That was something they asked for. There was questions, we were kind of going back and forth, and I stand my ground on the Form 10 issue. There was some issues about some of that language. That doesn't really make much sense to me. But so we're going back and forth, and it's thrown our timing. Okay, so we are proceeding. I want to make sure that all the structure and history of the company is where it needs to be, that it is accurate, so that when we become an SEC filer, we don't have any historical issues or legacy issues coming from the rear end and biting us, right? So we need to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted, T's crossed. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We are working on the intellectual property protections. We are working on building revenues. We are working with regulators to make sure that the public side of the company, the corporate structure, and the history of the company is exactly where it needs to be. We are doing all of this simultaneously. And we are also building out revenue streams. So we are moving forward. So I know this has been a long video. Maybe we'll kind of carry this over into another discussion. I'd like to kind of go further down the road on what it is we are working on simultaneously. But once we get to the 20-minute mark in a video, we'll stop now and then we'll move in to another video. So maybe next week we'll kind of recap some of this and discuss what we're working on right now and how that all kind of fits together. Because I think that's a piece of the puzzle that, for those who get it, a little redundancy doesn't hurt. But for those who don't, it may help provide a little better fidelity on what it is we're trying to accomplish, and more importantly, how we are executing and putting measures in place to actually get to where we want to be. So I'll end it here. Great questions. I just, thank you everyone for taking the time to put these questions out. I will see you next week. I think now that we have these questions, I think there's a little more clarification needed on a few other items that were maybe not asked, but I think kind of would help give a little better context to these questions and where these questions are coming from. We'll do a video next week and maybe get into a little better explanation on, or deeper dive, I should say, on some of the other things that we're working. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Again, thank you so much for the questions and for all the support and getting all of your messages. And I look forward to talking to you next week. Thank you.